Good evening and welcome to Poland Daily. I'm Nicholas Richardson and this is the news. Today at the National Stadium in Warsaw, the Polish Prime Minister, Mateusz Morawiecki, inaugurated a roundtable discussion on education. During the meeting, which included representatives from the government, politicians, educational experts, teachers, parents and students themselves, the most important issues raised concerned the need for systemic changes in the education system.
The big absentees at the round table on education, as announced in advance, were the Polish Teachers' Union, the Trade Unions Forum and the Civic Platform opposition party, but Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said the door still remains open for them. I think that this is one of the most important debates we have had in Poland in recent years. I hope that we will contribute to working out the best solution for the education reform for our students, for Polish schools. I express my gratitude for the great effort on the part of the teachers and all educators who work hard with open hearts to shape incoming generations of Poles. Today's discussions focused on 4 topics: students, teachers, the quality of education and modern schooling. Over 60 people took part.
This should show the direction of changes which would happen in the education system in Poland over the next several years. Also, we are in the middle of the dialogue with our social partners, which has been taking place for a few weeks already at the Center for Social Dialogue. Those negotiations are not easy.
To nie są łatwe rozmowy.
In addition to politicians, the representatives of education experts, teachers, students and parents were present. I'm not saying that they would back off from their positions. As far as the quality of education, they should hold firm. As far as salaries, this is an issue of the country's finances and should be negotiated. Teachers should get a small raise. The Polish Teachers' Union, the Trade Unions Forum propose a roundtable as a part of the extended Social Dialogue Council in June and expect a concrete solution that will prevent them from resuming the strike in September, which they already announced earlier. Government representatives, however, hope that a solution will be reached that will prevent such situation. Based on the work in several panel groups, we will come up with proposed solutions which will be presented for the opinion to all teachers. The work in the panel groups are scheduled to take place on April 30th, 2019 and will continue as needed in the coming weeks.
The same has passed without amendment a change to the Act on National Council of the Judiciary, proposed by Law and Justice. This draft amendment had been adopted by the Parliamentary Justice Commission. One effect of the amendment, among others, is to abolish the right of appeal against a decision of the National Council of the Judiciary in relation to the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court.
The Sejm has adopted an amendment to the Act of the National Council of the Judiciary after a night of a heated debate.
You are destroying the foundations on which a united Europe stands.
Today, the Senate approved changes to the Act.
The bill is rather short. We are carrying out the verdict of the Constitutional Tribunal, which should always be carried out efficiently.
The amendment excludes the possibility of filing appeals against resolutions of the National Council of the Judiciary regarding applications to the President for appointment as a judge of the Supreme Court.
This is yet another attempt to destroy everything that's left of the rules and law that have existed since 1989.
The opposition dislikes that the amendment brings to an end appeal proceedings before the court by the candidates rejected to become the judges of the Supreme Court.
This law is stating that everything that was set out we now have to throw away. Have you ever seen a country that works this way?
Originally, the adopted amendment in the bill was a lot broader. However, Law and Justice backed away from most of the changes, like granting the president a right to choose the first president of the Supreme Court, regardless of the opinion of the judges.
I think that we are in the process of some very heated political campaigns, and we need to be very careful with our legislative initiatives that can very easily become the subject of political debates.
The adopted amendment excludes the possibility of an appeal to the court regarding the refusal to appoint an applicant to the position of a judge of the Supreme Court.
The French President, Emmanuel Macron, gave a speech at the Élysée Palace today in which he summarised the national debate about the continuing national crisis and the Yellow Vest protests. During his speech, Macron also talked about modifying the rules of the Schengen zone so that the freedom to travel from one European Union country to another would be linked to each member state's obligations to welcome refugees from the Middle East. Zbigniew Stefanik has more from France.
The French President's conference was not without foreign threats, as Emmanuel Macron announced a big reform of the Schengen zone. The reform will be based on two main factors. On one side, the tightening of European borders, and on the other, the introduction of a strict solidarity rule, which will be set in the Schengen international agreements. The said rule will allow for the countries of the Schengen zone to exclude another member country if it doesn't comply with EU policies, the migration policy being one of those. As Poland has been against the open door policy since the very beginning of the migration crisis, since all the way back in 2015, the new reform may create even more friction between Poland and France, especially in light of the upcoming European Parliament elections in May. What's more, a country which doesn't welcome enough migrants would have to give up some of their EU funds, which would go to those countries that allow more migrants to enter. This poses trouble for Poland, as the reform will certainly be used as an argument in the ongoing EU budget negotiations.
The United States President, Donald Trump, announced that the Chinese President, Xi Jinping, will visit the White House. During the forthcoming meeting, the leaders of both countries are expected to sign a bilateral agreement which will bring an end to the current economic dispute between the United States and China.
Your moms and dads are working very hard to keep our country safe from danger and to keep America prosperous, thriving, and strong. They're fighting for better health care and better schools to help millions of other families just like yours. And they're making sure that the White House puts its best foot forward when we welcome foreign leaders on American soil. We have Prime Minister Abe of Japan coming tomorrow. It'll be a very important meeting. We will soon be having President Xi from China coming. We have many of the leaders, ultimately all of the great leaders come here.
US President Donald Trump said on Thursday that he would soon host Chinese leader Xi Jinping at the White House, setting the stage for a possible agreement on trade between the world's two largest economies. Trump was addressing families at a Bring Your Child to Work event at the White House grounds when he made the statement. The White House said on Tuesday that the Secretary of the Treasury, Steven Mnuchin, and US Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer would travel to Beijing for additional tasks on a trade dispute that has led to an exchange of economic tariffs between the two countries. Beijing and Washington are seeking a trade war which has cost them billions of dollars, disrupted supply chains, and rattled financial markets.
That's all from the news. Thank you for watching. Do stay with us for the weather, business and more programming. But from me, it's have a good night and a better tomorrow.
I'm Aleksandra Zarzycka and welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tonight. A warm night across the Poland. Rain will appear around Koszalin, Gdańsk and in Kraków. Temperatures ranging between 10 degrees in Białystok and Lublin to 15 degrees in Kraków. In central Poland, temperatures is ranging about 12 degrees. Overcast skies without rain will appear around Szczecin, Zielona Góra and Bydgoszcz. In Warszawa and in Poznań, thunderstorms is expected. Pressure will be low. And now over to tomorrow. Rainfall is expected on the west. More sunlight we will see in central and on the east. The temperatures will range from 13 to 20 degrees in Białystok. Let's see the forecast for the following 3 days. Sunday will be rainy on the east. A maximum 16 degrees is expected on the west. On Monday, overcast weather will appear in most regions, but northeastern Poland will stay sunny, and there we will see a maximum 16 degrees. On Tuesday, more sun is expected across the Poland. Little rainfall will appear on the southeast. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Poland Daily Business Edition. We will talk tonight about the retail sales that apparently slows down in Poland. Professor Zbigniew Krysiak of Warsaw School of Economics is our guest. Sir, welcome to the show.
Yeah, nice to
and
be here.
Can we really say that analysts expected 3.9 growth of the retail in March, yet the result is 3.1 and the alarm bells are ringing? Are they right, or is premature?
No, it's premature. I think this is a little bit seasonal, situation, and this is after the match, and we are going, to have, in April, basically, the Easter. So before the Easter, usually people are spending more money. Additionally, we need to remember that, our demand and, basically the appetite for consumption and the spendings were growing over the last, years. So we are on the much more higher level so we don't need to expect, that it's going to be so fast. But still, the 3.1 or 3.6, this is almost in the range of the error.
Right. If you look a little bit to the earlier February results, they say it was 6.5 growth comparing to the February of 2018 growth in the retail sales. And then we read the stories about perfectly developing Polish economy. Right now we hear that it's slowing down. But the basics are important. Is this particular economy in health position? Is the prospective growth secure in terms of 10, 20 years, according to you?
Yeah, I would say that, we can, expect, very stable growth, even if it's not going to be over each year, 5%, but, it seems to be that's going to be between 3 or 4%. It's good enough. We can, as well observe that, the people are spending more money on the investment goods. So, like, a different households, equipment, and less for goods which are not so much added value, let's say, in that word. So it seems if the household equipment or the furniture, so things like that, are more, demanded, then as well, our structure of the industry, structure of the production is more positive. So just switching to a trend related to the investment, which probably analysts speaking about just the number, the overall number 3.1 instead of 3.9, they didn't, highlight it enough that, most important is that the structure of the demand is just bringing, the industry and the production to the more investment goods. So which is a very expected, basically process, because we like to have basically demand and spending of money, not only for just a basic consumption. Okay, basic consumption is better than people eat less and more healthy, or just spend more money on households equipment, which is
preferably manufactured in Poland.
Manufactured in Poland, right?
Now, this will require some special program to make people aware that if they buy Polish things, they are spinning up economy. If they buy things that are imported, they are basically giving their wealth to somebody else in exchange for goods.
Yeah, this is a good point. This is as well a process we basically run in Poland, and we need to highlight that, and we need to, I suggest for the government to make a more investment in the promotion of that approach, because as you said, yes, the spending, is just the demand, spending the money. It turns our production, Polish company production, to investments. If we just spend money for goods which are just imported from the outside, we feed the other economies like Germany. So be very, smart to do that. And we as well would like to challenge all different institutions and our companies and our, customers to think about that, that this is going to be additional added value if we buy a Polish product. products. They are sometimes, you know, the local governments, like for instance in Warsaw, the president of Warsaw, instead of buying, you know, the trains from the Polish companies, he's just buying the trains from Korea, which is not, this is a rather a destruction of our economy.
Yeah, you're saying about the Trumps in Warsaw, that's very controversial deal, and it's actually, we should have another conversation, particularly on that item issue, because it is strange, and there's lots of things to talk about, but our time is up, Mr. Professor, and thank you very much for coming to this show. That was it for tonight's Poland Daily Business.
I'm Aleksandra Zarzycka and welcome back to Poland Daily Weather. Let's take a look at the forecast for tomorrow. Rainfall is expected on the west. More sunlight we will see in central and on the east. The temperatures will range between 13 and 20 degrees in Białystok. And now let's see tomorrow's forecast for our continent. Rain will dominate in Oslo, with temperatures ranging about 14 degrees. Rainfall will appear in British Islands and on Iberian Peninsula as well. Higher temperatures in Central Europe. There we will see about 24 and 27 degrees. On the northeastern Europe, more sunlight is expected. Thank you for watching and goodbye.
Jan Kochanowski was a Polish Renaissance poet who established poetic patterns that would become integral to the Polish literary language. He is commonly regarded as the greatest Polish poet before Adam Mickiewicz and the greatest Slavic poet prior to the 19th century. Kochanowski was born at Sycyna near Radom, Poland. Little is known of his early education. At 14, fluent in Latin, he was sent to the Kraków Academy. After graduating in 1547, at age 17, he attended the University of Königsberg in Ducal Prussia and Padua University in Italy. At Padua, Kochanowski came in contact with the great humanist scholar Francesco Robotello. Kochanowski closed his 15-year period of studies and travels with a final visit to France, where he met the poet Pierre Ronsard. In 1559, Kochanowski returned to Poland for good, where he remained active as a humanist and Renaissance poet. He spent the next 15 years close to the court of King Sigismund II Augustus, serving for a time as royal secretary. Kochanowski settled on a family estate at Czarnolas, Blackwood, to lead the life of a country squire. In 1575, he married Dorota Podlodowska, with whom he had 7 children. Kochanowski is sometimes referred to in Polish as Jan z Czarnolasu, John of Blackwood. It was there that he wrote his most memorable works, including the dismissal of the Greek envoys and the Laments. Kochanowski died, probably of a heart attack, in Lublin on August 22, 1584.
Could you tell us a little something about his background and maybe how that shaped the kind of poet and author he became?
Yeah. Besides his great and profound erudition and knowledge of ancient authors, who I mentioned before, his background, the cult of Krakow, the environment in which this kind of wit or humor I was talking about was really common, and everybody was poking fun at each other, and this atmosphere of fraternity or of friendship really made this poetry. It comes from this kind of culture, of this kind of communication between people. So even if we're talking about well-known persons or wealthy noblemen, some high-profile men of the time, they are portrayed as normal people, ordinary men with their flaws, with their imperfections. His poetry, his trifles, try to show them in their human form, not necessarily as someone beyond the others, beyond the normality.
So it wasn't sort of someone in particular within his family growing up, or close friends who kind of had that influence? Or?
His family wasn't that rich, so
right.
what made him Kochanowski, we know, were the financial backers he found, who really saw talent in him and the eagerness to grow and to also to serve them as their poet. He tried to get the king's attention, especially in times of Sigismund August. But he didn't quite manage that. We don't know exactly what was the reason of this negligence from Sigismund August. But he had other financial backers he could rely on. For example, Piotr Myszkowski, who was a dear friend of his and really helped him a lot. First to go to Italy, then as a courtesan during his stay in Poland. He often expresses great gratitude towards him, and he's one of the people that made him be this kind of poet he became. So more than family, his friends, his wealthy friends who helped him develop as a humanist and as an author.
Okay. So now you've mentioned a few times the sort of the concept or ideology of humanism,
yes,
shall we say. Tell us a little something about the significance of that. So the significance that played, the ideology played in that period, and then how in turn that influenced his work.
Yeah, it had a huge impact on his words and on his way of thinking and being an author. Humanists rediscovered a man and the life itself. So people weren't interested only in getting recognition from God and get saved by Him, but also to find happiness here while we're on earth, while we're alive, and the human being and all that is connected with him became really a center of attention for the people of the period, and it shows in different types of art and culture that was preserved from the epoch. His works are not different from it. They don't differ from the whole humanistic context of the culture of the time. So the human being and human affairs are the center point of his work, of his thinking. The questions he's asking and he's seeking an answer for it, they relate to the happiness a man can find on earth, not necessarily after that, but while we're here. And the answer for these questions he's seeking in philosophy of the time that from its side hails from antiquity as well, from Stoicism and Epicureanism, and that's where he tries to get the answers he needs for the happiness. And as I mentioned, one of his ways of being happy is having this asylum in the countryside, far from everyday rush and the flows of being courtesan, which after some years bored him. He got bored with the court, the necessity to get attention of people, to pave his path through the different obstacles of life. So he said, no, I quit. I prefer to find my own haven, my own asylum at Czarnolas, which became his residence in the last years of his life.
Yeah, it really sounds like he's quite an original at the time. So when you're painting this sort of picture of humanism kind of maybe even changing the direction of society in Europe, etc., maybe it's important to sort of say that people were maybe just sort of living for living's sake. And
Absolutely.
Maybe waiting for death might be a bit of a strong way of phrasing it, but maybe his bringing of humanism or spreading of humanism to Poland changed this mentality.
Absolutely. He shaped the way of thinking of many people, I would say. He expressed the needs of the epoch, of the people of the time, but also shape the way they thought about life, about themselves, about God or happiness, which are the most important topics of his works, I would say.
Okay, so now some people, after hearing this, might be unfamiliar. Now, of course, probably people brought up in Poland will be familiar because, as far as I'm aware, it's obligatory in Polish schools.
Still.
But if you were raised abroad, etc., and you do have some sort of interest, what is the most accessible route? Where is the best place to start?
Yeah, I would say trifles. So these short epigrams that cover different topics of the courtesan life, but also the years he spent at Charles, because he wrote them continuously over several decades of his life. So they are really accessible, I would say, and they're still funny, as I mentioned. So yeah, don't bother don't be afraid of taking them and get acquainted with them, especially when many of them are translated in English, as well as songs or trance, or the tragedy he wrote for King Stefan Batory's dismissal of Greek envoys. So this way of introducing tragedy, classical tragedy, to Polish literature of the time. A very successful one, I would say. So if somebody loves theater or mythology, go ahead and check this really fine work of his.
Excellent. Right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Rafał Rusnak.
That's right.
Thank you for joining us here on Poland Daily Culture. We'll be here again, same time tomorrow, and see you next time. Goodbye.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are at the city of Lublin, one of the largest and most historical cities of Eastern Poland. We will be speaking to Mr. Hubert Mącik, Chief Heritage Protection Officer, about some of the most beautiful buildings of Lublin and the history behind them. The most important religious building any medieval town is lucky enough to have would be the cathedral. And as I know, there's also a cathedral here in Lublin. And I was wondering what are the history behind the building of the cathedral, what purpose it did serve, and just generally the story revolving around Lublin's cathedral.
To jest jeden z najważniejszych zabytków miasta, jeden z najcenniejszych.
This is one of the most important monuments of the city, one of the most valuable architectural objects, not only in Lublin but in the entire region. But the church dedicated to St. John the Baptist wasn't founded as a cathedral. Until the beginning of the 19th century, Lublin belonged to the Krakow diocese. In truth, during the times of Władysław Jagiełło in the 1420s, there was an idea for Lublin to become the seat of the new episcopate, a new episcopate which was to encompass the area of the Chełm episcopate and the eastern part of the Krakow episcopate. But despite the fact that Pope Martin V gave the appropriate permission required to create an episcopate in Lublin, the then Bishop of Krakow, Zbigniew Oleśnicki, opposed the idea of a Lublin episcopate effectively enough for it not to be created. It was only created at the beginning of the 19th century, in 1805, when Lublin was under the Austrian partition. The largest church at the time in Lublin, the Church of St. John the Baptist, which was created 200 years earlier for the monastery of Jesuits, at the end of the 16th century was chosen as the cathedral headquarters. The monastery of Jesuits was very active at the time in Poland. In many areas of the Republic, the Protestant faith gained the most supporters, particularly among the nobility. One such area was the Lublin voivodeship. A large part of the nobility in the Lublin voivodeship were members of Calvinism. The Jesuits, for whom fighting Protestantism was one of the main goals, tried to set up churches and colleges in every big city in order to teach and convert the nobility. A Jesuit church and monastery and Jesuit college were founded in Lublin in 1582. The church began to be built in 1586. Two Italian Jesuit architects, Giovanni Maria Bernardoni and Giuseppe Brizio, designed it. It was completed in 1604 and consecrated after the finishing touches were completed in 1626. The church was located right behind the Old Town, because the Old Town was too small for such a construction, which is why the moat of the southern side of the city was filled in, and a big church, on a scale never before seen in Lublin, was built. The church was richly equipped, it had a rich decor. Unfortunately, in 1752 there was a fire, after which the church had to be rebuilt. Of the previous decor there remained only paintings in the main apse and two chapels, including the Olejkowiczów-Słuckich chapel, which had a very beautiful decor from the beginning of the 17th century. After the fire in 1752, the church was renovated. New towers were built, but above all, what was accomplished and preserved to this day was the late Baroque quality interior design. The church was equipped with polychrome, painted by the excellent painter from Moravia, Józef Meyer, who was the court painter for Augustus III of Poland. These high-class illusionist paintings are today considered to be some of the most outstanding from the whole of Central Europe during that period. Apart from that, new altars were put in, and the full design and decoration of the construction was completed. Interestingly, today we can see objects in the church cathedral which have been moved there from other churches. In particular, which is very important from the point of view of the history of the city, there are a few items moved from the now non-existent parish church of St. Michael. After its dissolution in the 1770s, the Jesuit church ceased performing the function of a monastery and the Jesuits college.
Świętego Michała. Kościół jezuitów przestał pełnić funkcję kościoła klasztornego i kolegium jezuitów po kasacie zakonu w latach 70.
For a short time it served as the headquarters of the Trinitarian order, and finally in 1805 it became the cathedral of the Lublin diocese. At first, Lublin bishops resided in the city of Krasnystaw, because this church, transformed into a grain warehouse for a certain period of time, required renovation. Only after its renovation in the 1830s was the Lublin bishops' headquarters moved to the church cathedral. In 1992, the church was raised to the status of an archcathedral by the Pope, and since that time the Lublin bishops are archbishops. Today, after numerous maintenance work carried out after the war, despite the fact that the church had not suffered major damage during the Second World War, it is one of the best preserved and most valuable monuments of the city.
Jest to jeden z najlepiej zachowanych i najcenniejszych zabytków miasta.
Lublin, like all Polish cities during the Second World War, was far from untouched by the ravages of Hitler and Stalin. However, the city was spared the level of destruction seen in cities such as Warsaw, Gdansk and Wrocław. Next up, we will ask Mr. Mącik about the damage Lublin's St. John the Baptist Cathedral suffered during the war.
So, as we know, many of the historical buildings were tarnished during World War II. The German made it a point to destroy some of the buildings here, not just here in Lublin, but all of Poland. I was wondering how the cathedral fared during that time.
Szczęśliwie Lublin nie był zbyt mocno zniszczony podczas II wojny światowej.
Fortunately, Lublin wasn't damaged too much during the Second World War. Unfortunately, the former Jewish district at Podzamcze was completely taken apart, purposely, but when it comes to the remaining parts of the city, including the Old Town and churches in Lublin, they had only slight damages. During the bombing in September 1939, the quarters of one building by Jezuitska Street was damaged, but bombs did unfortunately also hit the cathedral. One of the bombs hit the cathedral portico, one hit the so-called acoustic chapel, destroying the canopy.
Akustyczną, której sklepienie zostało zniszczone. Ponadto w pożarze spłonął dach całego budynku.
The entire roof was also burned in fire. The portico was reconstructed after the war, but not in the same way it had looked before the war. An opportunity was seized to reconstruct it in the way it had looked previously, according to a design by Antonio Corazzi, a prominent Italian architect who worked in Poland during the 1820s and 1830s, mainly in Warsaw, but also in Lublin. The portico was converted to have 6 columns. The acoustic chapel's canopy was reconstructed.
W katedrze jest bardzo ciekawym miejscem, często odwiedzanym przez turystów.
The acoustic chapel is a very interesting place, often visited by tourists. It now has a very interesting museum exhibition showing the goldsmithing and liturgical vestments in the cathedral. What is also interesting is the profile of the canopy, which has been designed in such a way that when two people stand in opposite corners of this interior and whisper against the wall, they can hear each other.
Ten dźwięk odbija się po sklepieniu w taki sposób.
The sound bounces off the canopy in such a way that even when not speaking loudly, just whispering, it can be heard clearly in various parts of the interior. After the many repairs done at the cathedral after the war, it is today one of the most interesting and most important historic buildings in Lublin. Fortunately, the damage it suffered wasn't as bad as the damage suffered by other sacred buildings around Poland.
Jak dla wielu zabytków sakralnych na terenie Polski.
I would imagine the cathedral would be connected to some well-known religious events.
Katedra była miejscem tak zwanego cudu lubelskiego. Jest też sanktuarium.
The cathedral is where the so-called Lublin miracle took place. There is also a sanctuary relating to this. There is a picture of the Virgin Mary in the cathedral that is said to have wept in 1947. The whole situation caused the residents of Lublin and the entire region to be deeply moved. Because of this miracle, the tears that ran down Virgin Mary's face, thousands of people gathered inside and outside the cathedral, which was of course treated by the authorities as a very big problem. The communist authorities took this as a political demonstration, so participants of the devotions, as well as the clergy, were met with a lot of repression. But to this day, the cathedral is also a sanctuary of the Virgin Mary of Lublin of this crying image.
Ale do dzisiaj katedra jest także sanktuarium Matki Bożej Lubelskiej, tego właśnie płaczącego obrazu.
The city of Lublin is not just one of the oldest cities of all of Poland, but also one of the best preserved. Thanks to the meticulous work of historians and the heritage protection officers, future generations will get the opportunity to witness centuries of history firsthand. That's it for today. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another exciting edition of Poland Daily Travel, where you learn more about Poland here than in any other place in the world. Today, for this special edition and for the next couple of episodes, we're going to be in the studio. My guest is the loquacious and inimitable know-it-all Artur Górniewski. And we'll be examining together the greatest hits of Polish travel, places that you just won't want to miss when you come to Poland. We'll be skipping over Warsaw since we've covered it over the last few months extensively. And we'll be heading out in our minds to some of the great places like the Tri-City area, including Gdansk and Sopot and Gdynia, and the Hel Peninsula. We'll be talking about the Wolf's Lair, Hitler's explosive hideout in the Missouri and Warmia region of Poland in the northeast. Old Prussia, they call it. And we'll talk about some of the famous castles in Poland. Malbork, Nieborów, and Książ. Not all of them, but some of them, because there are a lot of really, really neat castles in Poland. And palaces. We'll take you on a journey in your mind to Kraków, to Zakopane, and we'll talk a little bit about Auschwitz. which is more of a center for pilgrimage than a tourist attraction, of course. And we'll take you to Białowieża Park on the eastern border with Belarus. There, the ancient bison roam. The lynx and the wolf are at home. It's also the oldest piece of forest left in the European Union. All this and more on the next couple of episodes of Poland Daily Travel. Hey, stick with us. Watch us on YouTube. And if you like it, just take a moment and click that like button. Poland Daily Travel. We do it for you. Thanks for watching. I suppose also nearby, we might as well, I mean, we need to talk about this because perhaps the greatest flow of travelers to Poland are coming here to see, is a pilgrimage, I suppose, in a way, to see the concentration camps. And perhaps the most famous one is in Auschwitz, which is also near Oswięcim in Polish,
yes,
which is near Krakow.
Yes.
So I think we would be remiss if we didn't mention that exists.
It's 1 hour, 1 hour drive from Krakow to Auschwitz, the concentration camp, the biggest prison in world's history, the Holocaust place where it really happened. We must remember that Oświęcim is a medieval city with medieval dukes, with medieval royal castle and Gothic church. So it's just as an if the concentration camp wouldn't be established over there, we would advertise this place just to visit as another beautiful medieval architecture. But of course the history determines our perception of this place in a very sad way. So it's even difficult to talk about the beauty of the local castles when you have what you have over there.
I think it's also difficult to really discuss this topic more than to say that everyone should visit one of these concentration camp sites, of which there are many in Poland. There's no need going into all the different names, but I think people know. All you have to do is search it out on the internet if you don't know already. And there are also some in Germany. And everyone should visit one of these one time.
Yes.
And pay their respects to the people who perished there. But let's move on, because I don't want this to continue and be something all about concentration camps. We know what that is, and people can look that up and visit. Let's move over to the extreme west and to the area of Wrocław, because Wrocław used to be called, it was Silesia, it's called Silesia, and it was also part of Prussia. And the capital was Breslau, which is now called Wrocław in Polish, right?
So the border over there was changing many times.
Right.
Sometimes it was Prussian, so German, sometimes it was Polish. So very in common history of these families and local citizens. Amazing castles in this area of Hochberg.
A lot of other castles with more of a Germanic flavor, again.
Yes.
But there's a very good example, which is often used for filming movies and television by people from all over the world, and that's książ. Yeah.
Well,
Did I say that right?
So if you pronounced it in Polish way as you did it right now, it's A+ once again.
Was that okay?
Książ is exactly how we pronounce it. So yes, you pronounced it correctly.
Okay?
It's a castle of Hochberg family. They had more than 1,700 factories. The guy was one of the richest European guys. The guy married the most beautiful European lady, which was having amazing waist, and there are her paintings inside that castle. First vacuum cleaning system used on entire planet Earth in Książ Castle. Central vacuum cleaning system.
Yeah.
You had a pipe. You attach the pipe to a wall. There is a little hole in a wall. You attach it and you are vacuuming the.
That's incredible. How'd they do that?
I mean, you can go and see.
Do you know that?
You can go and see.
Really?
Yes.
I've been there. And in fact, I was in a project that filmed there one time. And it's a huge castle.
Yes.
And underneath is amazing. And it sits on this hill over a valley and a small stream, and it's very wooded there.
Amazing.
It's
just
absolutely incredible.
It's like from the movies. It's like on a single cliff, huge castle, amazing decorations, and gorgeous.
Hey, what about moving away from Wrocław?
Yes.
Well, no, we should also say that the old town of Wrocław, even though a lot of it was destroyed, the old town remains in pretty good shape. I mean, it's pretty impressive.
Yes.
As an example of a medieval marketplace.
Yes.
And very Germanic influence. It would not be out of place in Germany, in fact. People forget sometimes that the cultures of Poland and Germany really do mix a lot, not just in the food and drink, love of beer and love of sausages and sauerkraut and things like that.
To confirm this theory,
but also in architecture,
it's not like Polish-German relationships are only World War II and.
No, of course not, and people forget that.
There was a moment, our first king, Bolesław Chrobry, where he was growing up in German society, and he knew the Caesar of ancient of the German Empire, Otton III, and Otton III visited Bolesław Chrobry in Poland when he was ruling our country.
What sort of time are we talking about?
This is exactly year 1000 that we are talking about.
That's the beginning of Poland.
Yeah, that's the beginning of Poland. When it was a tiny... Officially, the state was established, and we have very good relationships with Germany. Otton III comes to Bolesław Chrobry.
This is Viking time, just the end of it.
Yes. Takes his crown and puts his German crown on a Polish head during such a little ceremony that they did to each other. So he also gave a gift to Bolesław Chrobry connected with Christian history, and Bolesław Chrobry also gave to Otton III another gifts, and at the beginning our relationships were very nice. There were bad moments, and then there were good moments as well. Saxon dignitaries became our kings in 18th century.
What do I want to see if I go to Wrocław now? I mean, the history we know is rich and varied and well worth reading about, and you feel it immediately when you go there. But what are the main attractions in Wrocław?
So great old town, main market square. During the December-January period, so Christmas period, one of European best Christmas market.
Oh, Christmas market, yeah, of course.
This is what you want to see during the winter. Amazing bridges.
I'd like to see that.
That's original architecture that makes you walk around, you see every single terraced house over there, and you want to take a photo, and you cannot believe it's Poland.
Yes, As I said before, it's pretty fine example of medieval architecture. Let's move on. Hope you enjoyed that episode. In the next exciting episode of Poland Daily Travel, we will be rounding off our talk about greatest hits of Poland with Białowieża, the oldest primeval forest left in Europe, bison and wolves, and the mysterious lynx. Stay tuned for the next episode, and like us on Facebook and YouTube.